stage, mate.
Thank you, Mark. That was such a, sometimes I listen to my own introduction and I go into a trance. Has ever that happened, before? So I'm a very animated individual, so I'll be very interactive. And when I say interactive, I'll just basically be able to look at you guys at the screen and be knowing that you're going through an experience. So there's a lot that I'm going to be doing today. If you guys, depending on your level of qualification and the expertise that you hold, you can decipher the bits that are most meaningful for you. That's how I basically put it. So usually when I'm working with psychiatrists and especially medical doctors, who come in for understanding hypnosis to a further lens, especially, working with trauma care. So I always put this up that I'm not going to use any technical jargons. I promise. I'm going to keep this as easy, as light, so that maybe somebody who's just been there at home can actually easily interpret whatever I'm actually going to say. So, although this is going to be a learning experience, but it's also going to be an induction, and this induction requires you to have your eyes open at all times to be able to pay attention to the smallest of details and pick up whatever you can pick up from the very fractions of, maybe some humor, some moments, some learnings, some curves. And we all have hands, right? Do you all have, get those hands to be a little bit free? We're going to do something really fun and it's going to be really amazing as well. If you kind of like rub your fingers, kind of like, put it near your ear and rub them and visualize, or basically imagine the sound of like as if you would scrub a paper and you get that sound. Do you? Everybody gets it? Yeah. That's really interesting what you can do with your hands. And if you kind of like, knock all the fingers on your hand, it kind of like seems like it's raining and you kind of have that rain type of, beat to it, or you can adjust that sound to whatever you like. And then you've got the horse, riding, like tap, like, as a horse is riding. And you'll get that almost there. And then also try this, put your two fingers like this and make the sound of a snowflake. Good. Great. Good job. Snowflake doesn't have a sound, but you still did it. Wasn't it fun? Yeah. So I'm kind of like always in the awe of how expressions work for us. And especially as a hypnotherapist, when the clients are coming in with a traumatic experience, most of the times they don't even recognize that trauma. And they just don't know how to even really express that. But they have a certain expression to it, which we just don't understand it yet. And while I was preparing for this topic, I really want to be as honest as possible. So when Candace called me and she said, "Hey, Arslan, what is the topic that you're going to be talking on? If you could provide that topic, and I'll share it with Adriana." And I always had this notion in my mind, okay, fine, I'm going to come up with this topic, which is going to be called trauma and trance. Now, for all the mothers in the house, can you raise your hands for mothers in the house? Oh, awesome. Even fathers. That's also good. So if you have children, right, I want you to particularly imagine this as a context. If a child ever brought up something that is really really difficult for them and it's difficult, yeah, wouldn't it be really compelling to let them know, hey, maybe this is just too difficult, why don't you just take it a notch down? Wouldn't that be a fair sense? Everybody agrees with me? Yeah, give me a thumbs up if that's a reasonable argument, right? So being on that front, I take this topic of trauma and trance, and I said, like, let me hand it over to Adrienne and she'll be very considerate and she approves it. Ouch. So particularly not only in that context, I also know how to create small traumatic experiences for myself. And when you really understand the context of trauma, you also learn how to dance to the other side of it. Bear with me because these are going to be some moments that are going to be shifting our paradigm of understanding how to work differently with our clients. Although this is a trans experience, but also we're learning how to work with our clients as well. Fully being hypnotized, but yet also having our eyes open and being there with the client. While this may look like as a training, it's still a simulation that we're going through, a simulation of like how Mark basically expressed in the context. And it's true. When we encounter difficult moments, right? Think about this for yourself. When we encounter difficult moments, what do we usually do? What do we usually do? Ouch. And I wonder what we do. But if you had to have the humor side of it, usually the husband would take his wallet out and look at the picture of his. We all know what that is, right? Yeah. And in my wallet, I have Mark's picture. So it's not always that. And why I have that is because he was the evaluator of my first trainer's training, which was phenomenal. I said, if I could basically go through this experience, what more could life knock me with? So sometimes, creating instances and scenarios for yourself can be also very profound. So I always hold this as a thought. Now, I'm not saying this just out of sense of humor, but it's also something really important too. When I say I have a picture, I look up to Mark. I look up to Adriana. Do we all look up to someone? Does that make sense? Yeah. Because there's something really important with trauma, and we would want to understand this. And this is something that I really was fascinated with. And I couldn't emphasize this enough. Did you know that with all the sense of instincts that are there, with all the instincts that are we could have a procreation instinct and all other instincts that are there, such as survival instinct. Did you know there's an instinct that is called worship instinct? And it's fascinating. It is an instinct. People are actually born with it. And being the Muslim I am, I'm going to give you certain instances. And depending on whatever religion, and culture we belong to, I would want you to have this as a perception of understanding what I really mean by worship instinct. So think about this in the context. Has anybody, experienced how Muslims live their lives? Yeah. And for Muslims, what is the highest sanctuary where they basically go and pray? So, for example, the Kaaba, Makkah, which is the center of, congregation for all the Muslims that come around, and they gather there, they say their prayers. And that's a fascinating thing. So when you ask people who are from Muslim faith, what is the really amazing thing, which, when you look at that Kaaba, what happens to you? And they'll say they kind of like dance. Think about all those experiences. They cry. They say this is one of the most beautiful things we've ever seen. Sometimes they faint. Sometimes they basically just hysterically laugh, and they kind of like spin to the tune and the dance of the environment. And same goes when you basically have somebody who's from the Hindu community and would look at the temple, or you have somebody who's Buddhist and would think about that construct of principles and origination of, constructs of values. When you think about this in the context of now even Michael Jackson's concerts, what happens? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And the predominance, of this factor, which I want you to basically maybe even put this down and write this down. So people always need something to look up to. We're not going to debate what to look up to. And that's a choice point. As long as people can look up to something, they could look up to a chair, they could look up to anything, they could look up to sky, they could look up to nature, they could look up to love, they could look up to God, whatever is the construct for them. And this is really important for me to understand because when I interviewed a lot of, people, and I also interviewed the people who were also working with people who committed suicide. And it's a really sensitive topic. We don't touch base on this. But when we do touch base, what is the number one reason of giving up with life itself? Is they don't have anything to look up to. Know this as a construct. So I considered worship as a very integral part when you're working with your clients to be able to establish first a therapeutic relationship with them, but also to be aware of what they look up to because it's going to become important in between somewhere down the line because we're working with trauma right now. And we would want to basically wake up to the better side of it. To understand this as a perspective, we would really want to know what the client looks up to. And we have certain moments where we look up to things. For example, every time when I was in my trainer's training, I would look up to Mark as my evaluator. So how could I be an evaluator like Mark? How could I start with those linguistics? Sometimes just to have fun with it, I've been in the media industry, and believe me when I basically mark and evaluate people. So I would want to use those linguistics, and that's something that inspires me in that very moment of how to be an outstanding, evaluator. But then in the context of training, if you've ever seen Ted and Adriana working on stage, their magic, their sense of way of persuasion, I would want to adapt to that and I would look up to them. And in different moments, I can always look up to something that helps me to basically relax. And if you know about relaxation anymore, I'm going to help you to understand few things around it. So I made a lot of notes for it. Of course, my brain doesn't have the capacity to remember everything, but I will let you know of certain things that can basically be done. Now, one of the best one is talking positive to something. And these are some, sidelines that you should have and establish them, although they look very basic and primitive. But I'll tell you that they're basis of every therapeutic relationship. For example, here's the thing. I want you to write something really positive about yourself. Can you take the Zoom chat and maybe evade that space? And I want you to give a perception of yourself, perception of what you're really exceptionally great at. Talk something really nice about yourself, something that you're exceptionally great. It may not be true. I'm just kidding about that one. But you can give a perception of what you are really great at. If you can put that up in Zoom chat for everybody to know about something that you're particularly really good at or what you're really nice or known for, and just have that up. Great. So we have somebody, putting in as enthusiastic. I'm a good writer and a good friend, nurturing. That's a capacity, very warm with people and always spreading my positive energy. These are all beautiful thoughts, right? Now, for a moment, visualize if you were all of this. It still stands true. It's fascinating. We all can be optimistic, motivate, you know, good at connecting, being a connector, you know, a rebel. Yeah. Being a rebel is also great. I once had a client who came up and said, I like suffering. And I want you to know how to work with such individuals. And, like somebody came like, Arslan, I like suffering. And they had this grudge, I love suffering. And I said, that's right. That's the prophetic way. What more could a, prophetic way be of than that of choosing suffering and having more humility towards the mankind and being there for doing everything for the humanity at large. The client was just quiet. It's like all of the guards kind of like fell down, being able to really take up a thing that may look very aggressive in nature, but can very well collapse and, melt into the sequence of a client. Are you all with me? Yeah, you're getting this. So see how you could really establish that therapeutic relationship. I'm by the end of this workshop, you're gonna be going out and at least knowing how to keep stress at least away from life. Because I've modeled some of the best psychiatrists, and it's amazing what they actually had to offer. How many of you ever heard about this psychiatrist who's called Joseph Wolf? He was hanging out in the Stanford and with B.F. Skinner, and an amazing, amazing person. I think who set the foundation. Joseph Wolf set the foundations for how to work with trauma care, and especially with anger management. He was the first guy to devise a formula for anger management. And I want you to go through this as a formula. And I want you to bring up an experience for yourself that has been haunting you or daunting you. And it's okay. You don't even have to tell me. You don't have to do this if you don't wish to. Sometimes you can create an imaginary one and it's all right. As long as you do this, that is going to help you to work with your clients. That's perfectly well. But if I have an experience in front of me, yeah, and I want to bring this experience up. So, for example, are you the chalk person? The blackboard and the chalk? Yeah. You got to be, so you're going to be as old as I am when we used to use blackboards and chalks. Okay. Right now, then we have, the technology has evolved. But when there used to be these chalks, there was this professor, and one day I was just lost in my own zone of thoughts. I was thinking about, hmm, who would be my ideal relationship partner. I'm just kidding. That wasn't true. So he just took the chalk and he just threw it literally. And his aim was so good that it just really hit my third eye right there, on my head, bumped. And ever since, I kind of like had a traumatic experience with chalk. Here's something about trauma. You can't compare one trauma to another trauma. For a child, having their ice cream taken away could be the most traumatic experience for them. For somebody who's gone through a physical and ritual abuse, trauma could be very different for them. But no one trauma is in comparison and contrast to the other one. And that's a fascinating concept that I'm giving you. And as you see that, any experience can be learned from. So with that chalk experience, I kind of like, oh, whenever I see these chalks, it's kind of like, it's like somebody's taking their nails and squeaking the blackboard. You guys all remember that sound, and it's really irritating and, shroudy. And it just kind of creates that same sense of anxiety for myself. And what Joseph Wolf did, he said, whenever you're in a state of anxiety, and you might want to write this down for your clients to understand this, as soon as you add in relaxation, it extinguishes the anxiety. Such a simple and profound concept on which he may have, attended a full lifetime to, but you cannot hold and anticipate negative emotion in a relaxed muscle body. Such an easy concept without even using the equation has a very complex name to it. I'm not going to just use that anyways, but I'm just helping you to understand that in a relaxed muscle body, we cannot. As beings of nature, when clients walk into my office, I have a high sense of acceptability, and which you too will from today onwards. Once you knew and you realize that negative iteration of thoughts is a naturally occurring process. Did you know that? We do negative thinking that is by default, by natural. It's really natural as a process. I walk down my house, I know when I'm going to my relative's house that I kind of like start making those figures of all my relatives that I want to just knock it. The bad relatives. It just happens automatically. The people that I want to punch, the people I want to really knock them off their balance. It just happens really naturally. Yet, positive thinking requires effort. That's a problem. Do you know? You got to really work towards it. You want to get fat? It's really easy. I can help you to model that. Sit on the couch, eat a lot of fats. It's really natural. You'll just naturally get fat. Yet, in order to have a six-pack abs, having the abs that are really toned to perfection, that requires effort. And I understood this, with clients, how, they practice and somehow most of the trauma that basically is accumulated by repeating those threat responses again and again and again until it completely solidifies. You follow me there, right? So as we have that experience of that chalk and that, professor or whatever that thing that you have, I want you to really visualize that, you know, response over there. But then this is what Joseph Wolf does. He says, take this chalk, hold it, embrace it, just grab it and bring it to your chest and take a nice deep breath and just relax. Just breathe. Just breathe. And you've heard this in different connotations, not using any complex words, but you've also done the exercises of peripheral vision. And it's the same expansion, of you opening up your umbrella, opening your arms to that experience and just fully living it. Also, finding the awareness that's other than the chalk. And now you're paying attention to every great moment that also coexisted. For example, in that awe of that chalk, I just almost forgot that there was this girl who was really good looking, and I had to just basically go up to her and say hi. And I just forgot about that experience. Once I opened that sense of umbrella, I'm embracing myself to, all those moments where, I wanted to basically go and appreciate all my teachers from childhood who have taught me for whoever I've become today, even to the extent when they threw that chalk, it helped me to become the man I am today. And that's okay. Sometimes these experiences are just a way of how to basically get you to be at wherever you would want to be today. Learning this as an experience, yeah. And the work that I'm going to basically be allowing you to teach you this, and if you understand up till now, and if you really do, you would really know this, and you can always take notes around this one. So there are also pelvic muscles in the body. Yeah. And when you basically focus in, on your pelvic muscles and you can relax them, which is also basically holding your stomach and making sure that when you breathe out, when you blow out, You expand your stomach, you just relax all the muscles down there, and it just feels really comforting. And as you do that, make sure you haven't eaten and drunk, a lot of water, because then you'll have to go to the washer. But if you would to do this, it just feels really relaxing. And these are some good exercises to know of, especially to work with your clients to establish that therapeutic relationship, even when they've not even given you the context of trauma. It's okay. Trauma doesn't need a context. You can just look at the client and smile. Help them to go through a beautiful experience that you can set up for them easily and effortlessly. That's what I'm going to be helping you to guide you with. So we did talk about positive attributes. We talked about everything. Sometimes it's just basically, getting to have your client to situate in front of you and, say, we're going to do a very quick exercise that's going to take about 10 to 15 seconds, where I'm going to look at you with the compassion, with the sense of encouragement that I'm going to be there for your support no matter what. I'll be there to help you and guide you through these moments that have been holding you back, but I'll be just there for you. Yeah. You don't say this, but visualize and conceptualize this on the back of your mind. And whereas you have the client to look at you, and when you can almost pick up those vibrations, looking into their eyes, knowing that they require that sense of support, not help, support. And I like that word, where they would want you to just facilitate and guide their experience, not fix them because they're broken in any way and form. So, with all that sense of expression, and when I understand that traumatic experiences can be expressions, I could only teach some of it in the amount of time I have. So the one that I selected for you, and it's a nice one, is basically maybe if you could work on forgiving ourselves. How about that? It's one of the experiences. We could also work on forgiving others. We could take on karmic lines and work on the sense of forgiveness and the construct on that. There's so many constructs that you can work with, maybe with the age regression. Hypnosis is all regression, right? So working with this construct of regression is a beautiful experience that you can give to your clients. Yet we will basically foresee at this current moment how we could do in context of forgiveness of self. And what would be all the things that are going to be necessary? That's going to be important. What are the things that I need to set this up for allowing my client to go through that experience? So whenever a client comes in, I have a beautiful metaphor, and this metaphor is not something that is unknown to you. It's really known. Would it be okay if you guys want to go along with me through this metaphor? Yeah. And I want you to come up with things that have been bothering you. Maybe at a very mild nature, or maybe it's some things that, may seem very unpleasant as an experience. But let's just go through this as a metaphor. And I love this one. It's a very common one. It's not something that's uncommon in the context of helping clients with self-forgiveness, but it's kind of like the young carpenter. I have very funny past lives. So in my past life, I was a female. Yeah. And I don't know, you could be somebody who you would choose to be, but I had a very female touch to it. And the, best frame for that is you always take your name and spell it upside down, or like, backwards. So every time you do that, it's kind of like really strange that a guy would sound like a feminine energy, and the girl who basically would do that backwards would have a very masculine tone to it. So it's not always true, but you could try that and check how it is. Mine spells to Nalsura if I had to do it. So Nalsura was actually a girl in her past life, and she was going through an experience, but either or, we all go through experiences, and she wanted to be this really outstanding carpenter in her life. And to do so, it was just about that time when she basically got registered, and she wanted to go to this, actual work where she could practice it. Yeah. So this young girl was, really there, and she was really admired because all these, hulky bulky people around her, they're like, dude, this girl's got guts. We always have that. Yeah. It's very, this is how it basically, comes out for very men dominant society, to basically not even conceive a girl basically being a carpenter. Yeah. And yet she just basically battles that entire notion of that thought process, but she's there. It's the first day at work. She's leaving, and her mother hands her a lunchbox. And as she does that, in that lunchbox, there's a gift. And the mother tells that child that when you go to the work, open it there. And she, being the inquisitive youngster that she is, being the carpenter she always wants to become, what do we always do with secret gifts? We just unpack it. Yeah, we unpack, we open. She puts those gloves on. And these are gloves of safety. We all have that, right? Who was the first person who wrote on trauma in terms of sanctuary? Sandra, I think it was Sandra Blocks. No, I took the name wrong. But I think it was Miss Brooks who wrote about sanctuary and the concept of sanctuary, of setting up the sanctuary for your clients. Sanctuary is the safety place, a safety net, a something that you could basically have as a concept for the client to really understand that they're safe and secure. And there sometimes does reside a problem in that. So those safety gloves were to protect her. Now, being a carpenter, what's really important for the client? To get their hands messed up. It's by, taking those nails, taking those damages, taking those cuts, taking those bruises. That basically redefines somebody into a craftsmanship. Does this make sense? Yeah. Where some places this glove works, some places this glove doesn't serve. For example, for all those who are in the field of medical and surgery would understand that they have to put gloves on before they can actually go into a surgery. Now it doesn't feel the same because they have to hold delicate equipment, but still with gloves, with that sense of safety and concern. Whereas in the field of carpentry, they would rather have to remove the gloves so that they could really work in the sense of very minute detail and perfections that need to be achieved. Now, she being she just basically goes and she works with whatever she has. It's funny. She's basically working there, looking at there, she notices these marks of these experienced people. She notices their small cuts, scratches. And it's an important detail that I'm saying because most people with trauma survivors don't have enough sufficient amount of experience. Write that down. If they knew what needed to be done, they wouldn't be sitting where they need to be sitting. So their lack of exposure to the surrounding is also really vividly important, equally as much as this metaphor. So she starts seeing the hands of other people. She cherishes, how their craftsmanship has come into being and how they've come in with the experiences that they have. I want you to imagine when, somebody was talking about that they're in Dubai, what it means when you're starting your business first time in Dubai. I want you to go back to the time when you really started that off. The difficulties that it took, the amount of walks, the amount of calls, the amount of energy that it consumed. Think about, the remote areas where people are working remote in a sense which are conflicted. So for example, from where Coach B comes from, a lot of area which is inflicted with so much pain and being able to work there, being able to work with the differences of, like when having challenges like internet. But when people have gone through those experiences, that's what defines it. That's why Coach B is sitting here with Grace. That's why June is here. That's why Mark's here. These are the people who have gone through brutal realities of life. Even you guys, I'm not excluding you in any way and form. So Sarah, for example, Nida, I want you to have a recollection of all those scars that just came about. And now you can cherish and celebrate them for the woman that you have actually become, for the person that you've actually become, for the graceful personality that you today have, and for what you're going through. For some of our pains could have been the terms of investment that we made, the amount of money that we spent, the amount of time we basically sacrificed. And such are gold plated scars that help us to become the best version of ourselves. So, as that girl is noticing those gloves, she's saying, well, what do I do now? Then she looks back at those gloves and she just takes them off. And she still sees her soft, inexperienced hands. These are the hands of a girl. untrained, undeveloped, untested. She comes to the understanding in that moment that even that these gloves, were given by the mother as a gift, was a gift of love and concern. Sometimes, what society throws at us is a gift of love and concern. Write that down. And that's what the client needs to understand. If you, as a hypnotist, can help them to recognize that, mother is that individual who would never want to hurt her child, she would just basically give them the glove so that they could remain safe. Sometimes being too safe does not allow you to live your fullest potential. Yeah. And you can always build more on this metaphor based on your sense of experience, your sense of understanding around it. And you can take it to whatever degree that you would like to. It's how you would want to go through this experience. So even those gloves were given by the mother as a love and concern. She would just take them off. That's how it was. If she really wanted to become an experienced carpenter, she just had to. She wanted to be a builder. So she just takes it off. But somewhere in her mind, there are times when she would really need that. And it's okay. Sometimes these things are called for. Now, people ask Arslan, how could it be called for? And it is called for. For example, the demonstration of violence is not really necessary to be always violent. Yet, having the capacity to feel angry when something is wrong, you can always bring that up. Does that make sense for everyone? Yeah. So sometimes you can bring those expressions when they're needed. Emotions are neither good or bad. It's really profound. Yeah. If I basically get angry, most of the clients when they walk in, is there son, I want to work on anger. It's like, why? What's the problem? How's that a problem for you? And the client needs to really express how it's creating a problem for them. Because if it's not, then it's not a problem itself. Emotions are just to be experienced. And if I feel angry looking at all those orphans, were not attended to, I, out of anger, can establish an orphanage, and that's fine. These skill sets are no different. I once ran this as a training simulation so that you understand this as a perspective. I want you to visualize this for a moment. What are the aspects and attributes that are needed to rob a bank? And I want you to literally visualize the context of what are the resources that are needed to rob a bank. And most of the perspectives that come up, well, you need really good human resources. You got to have a really good critical thinking mindset. Yeah. And all those attributes. And then I ask a person, what does it need to create a bank? Rob a bank and a create a bank, and it's pretty much the same. Interesting, except for the intention that was set forth. That's it. The only difference between what happens in terms of robbing a bank and building a bank, or building a company and sabotaging a company, is the intention or the mindset. And if that's clear for the client, they'll be able to navigate through this trance and be able to wake up to the other beautiful side. So we're just still going through that sense of metaphor where the client can have a very profound sense of she being able to let go of that guard and put it down. I'm going to share this with you so that you're able to go through with me on this journey of being able to help yourself, even working with trauma in situations and cases. And we'll basically delve more into that process. So we're going to be looking at forgiveness as an experience. Would that be okay? Yeah. So to be able to deal with emotions, to be able to work with those emotions that are going through for the clients that they've brought on the table, they may not have a full sense of clarity, but they just have that. And most of the time, what really is seen is that we always can objectify this in the context of giving it a metaphor. And when you give it a metaphor, you can also translate this into a story. And it's very profound. I can only narrate this, but I would want you to go through this alongside with me. We're going to help this girl. And as soon as we help this girl, we're going to help ourselves. In fact, I'm doing this right now today with you to help myself. Would that be okay? Yeah. And that's the intention that I'm going to set forth. So I had this client, she was amazing. I was working with her, but every alternative, she would basically have this collapse. And I wouldn't really understand what that collapse was. This collapse was a narration of where she basically noted that the family kind of like described it, that her hands would get so sweaty and pulpy, that she would just basically look like as if she's washed her hands. She actually hasn't. That's sweat. That's the amount of palpitation she would basically generate. And she would feel really anxious and she would just have a blackout. And we couldn't really understand what's going on. So once I was just basically going through the session, and the only good thing that I could actually do was establish the therapeutic relationship. That's it. That's all I had on my table. And I was doing this. It doesn't really mean that the experience is real, but I would want you to understand this. And it taught me a lot working with clients with the areas that they work with. And she suddenly said, you know, Arslan, I got this guy to basically, kiss me. And I didn't say this. I didn't say this, but I want you to understand this that, in my head, I had an intention. And in my head, in that moment, I said, why would you do that? I didn't say it. I just thought it. And you know what she did? She, hugging her pillow, says, because I'm a bad girl. And that was a moment of collapse, not for the client, for me, because I could understand that intention. I could understand where that was coming from. Perception is projection. We always read that. We never experience it. We never see it in a case of, an iteration. And I said, hey, listen, that's okay. We're going to work through this. This is a case file of a girl who was studying in a very premium school in Pakistan. And she was sexually assaulted by a head of the department who was a religious figure. And he used religion to basically tap into her personal boundaries because she was very religious. They both resonated on the very same values level, on the same level of construct for their sense of imagination. And she believes that she did something wrong. She allowed that person to enter in. She didn't have the experience of understanding safety and protection. Most of us, when we have children, and because I know I do too, I sometimes have that sense of, fear where I help them to understand what is good touch and bad touch. We've all talked about that, haven't we? Yeah. But that's not how it works for a perpetrator. It is a sequence. They kind of like see, okay, do I have the permission when I'm holding her finger? Oh, I have that. Now I can go towards the hand. So they're grooming. They're not doing, nobody comes and does bad touch. Who does that? People, perpetrators, in their context of their mindset, they evade by grooming their clients into that notion. And it was really important that this child never had that sense of understanding. And she couldn't forgive herself because she felt that she had done something wrong. Now, when you have that type of a client, it's necessary for you to build the context of trust, compassion, for having them to also relive and rewire their sense of experience with positive reinforcements. Relaxation, remember anxiety? When you have a relaxed body, you basically cannot experience the negative emotion in that. So, whereas I had to work with this girl to help her to understand, when you hug your dad, how's your dad breathing? How are you breathing? I want you to check in what you're feeling, check in how that, basically surrounding looks like. How's the surrounding? She says, yeah, it's really open. The door is open. My dad's hugging me. I feel all that love for my, father when I'm there with him. It's like, how was it when basically your teacher was involved? So he had one foot on the door so that nobody comes in. So how did that make you feel? She's like, horrible. So you don't have to experience that. It's not your fault. If that asshole, had to basically go through whatever he had to go through. It's not something that you should take on your own and go through your experience, but that's how experiences are. And when you're working with clients, you have to then basically help them to understand. So we're going to create a divide. And I got that girl to basically place herself and in her perspective. So you can always bring out the other part. So having, Adriana and Ted teach us timeline therapy is such a profound, easy way to do it. It's a beautiful modality to work around. It just happens automatically. Yet, if you want to do even more creative work with it, you can, and you can expand on it. And as you go into the timeline, when you're in the, phrase where that child is in their sanctuary, you can almost step out of the body and turn back and look at that child. So I would want you to perceive as if you can look at your little one and be able to look at that little one and notice that you're the grown up. Now, as a grown up, I would want you to know that you know so much. You know so much. You know how all those experiences have shaped you for being where you are right now. The only challenge is that little one is stuck where it was, you know? And that's where every classic hypnotist, language and the linguistic that they use is, wouldn't it have happened better if you knew what you know now? If you had only just known this, then you've all heard that one before. Yeah. Whatever is inner child work, when we're working with different areas, when we're working informed childcare therapy, when we're doing chair therapy, either or, all these things become extremely relevant. So when you have that little one right in front of you, here's what you can do. And we're going to do this all together, okay? In our own way and format. And for those who don't want to participate, can also preview to have their clients in front of them and see if you can unconsciously help them and influence, people at a quantum level and being able to work with the client even in your imagination. And that's possible, to be really honest. That's how Kim's presentation was for us, and was such a profound one if you could pick up those beautiful things from it. So as you sit there, get that child to express. The problem is the child has never expressed, fully and profoundly. So, what are the few things that you could say? You know, as a child, what would be the complaint be when you basically visualize all those people, or especially the people that have hurt you? Think in your mind, what would be the sense of expression? So, even when those words are not coming in, what could you basically encourage your clients to say? And you could have them to start by saying, "You hurt me." And you can write that down. You hurt me. And just stop. And I want you to literally say it. You hurt me because you started hurting me a long time ago. You hurt me when I was just a little girl. You hurt me when. You hurt me when. You made me feel. In fact, you know what? You make me feel. You made me think. You made me think. Because of you, I missed out on, and get them to express as much as possible so that you're able to get their purview. And as you do that, as you look at your little one, as the little one talks to your grown-up systems, they're like, you know what, you hurt me when you made me think, because of you, I missed out on. And when that basically gets exhausted, that's when at least you can get that child to now take a nice deep breath and just relax, helping them to feel even more comfortable, relaxed, and at least knowing that they're safe. And now they're able to let go of the things that have been there. And then you get the grown up, you know, because here's the biggest challenge for a client. Write this down. This is going to be very important. Do you know what every child considers? I wish somebody was just there for me. Wish if mom was there. Wish dad was there. Wish my brother was. Why wasn't my brother there? Why wasn't my sister there? Why wasn't my mentor there? Where was my protective angel? Where was my God? It's very different and unique for all the clients, but that's what they're gonna blame. In fact, to the extent that they're gonna say, where, you're talking to me as your inner child, how dare you? Where were you growing up when I was suffering? Where were you? And that's a moment of truth. They're gonna basically attribute that to something. And when that happens, always just be aware of it. Notice that it was no one's intention. Would you ever think there would be any mother on this planet Earth who's held a child in their womb for a fraction of the moment they would have not loved? For a father would have not loved, for a brother and sister who have not cared, for God to have done what has to be done. It's never been a second. At least there would be a second in the moment that they can always reflect on. It wasn't intentional, as long as you as the grown up can help that to understand. And we're going to do that. Okay, so we're going to do that together, and then I'm going to close on a small video. If I get the co-host right, so I'll just share the video with you guys over here. It's going to be a nice and profound one, a good closure to helping to understand this therapeutic process. So we're going to do this. Listen, little one, as I look at my little one is always a female version of me. It's so strange that it just changes its gender. So as I look at her and I said, like, you're beautiful, you're amazing. I never had the intention for this. All I wanted to do was maybe, have fun. I was curious, maybe. I don't know, maybe it was my curiosity. I just did the things what I did the way I did them, but it was just in those moments that some mistake happened. And I would want you to truly know that I'll always be there for you. You and I are not inseparable. We're basically inseparable because we are one. We're like, the tree. And when you basically have the trunk of the tree, you see those ripples, see those circle linings, and in the center at the core, that's where it sprouted from, is the roots. So you are that center of that circle. And you take that little one and you brace her and you insert her right deep down inside yourself and you fully accept it and just breathe again. That's important. And you say, that's right. It's all about waking up to the other side where any experience of trauma, when we really look at it, I don't know in what values level would you want to look at it, but in every values level, it just always makes sense because I want you to realize that, this trauma that you've been holding on to, yeah, has given you the awareness of, mystically being aware of the things that can go wrong. And if it was in values level two, you would basically be more aware of it. It got you to feel more stronger and help you to basically be understanding life more towards it. In values level three, maybe it would be that that experience taught you now how you could fight for all those millions of women out there, for all those girls who basically need that sense of protection. You're there as a fighter, as that Rambo, as that somebody who could always stand up tall for all those women who are out there. Maybe in values level four, it was, your truest sense of being able to sacrifice what you could lose today for a greater tomorrow, for maybe life hereafter would reward you with something really profound. But if you were in values level five, you only live once so that you could live an eternity in someone's perception. I mean, I would really want to be cared for, talked about, remembered in everyone's thought process. So in values level five, connecting with those 90,000 people that, is flared by a candlelight, you would want to get in touch with as many as people, transform the planet, at least be in congruence with the mission that even Adriana James has set forth for us. At values level five, we think about how do we spread the idea to a extent that you own the idea for it to be sold, and how that has shaped you to becoming a great, entrepreneur, a businessman, maybe. In values level six, you're forming a community. You're looking at that experience that you went through, which may just look really horrible, but you're basically there in the society, formulating a community that is there talking about it and is now actively propagating and helping the people to know more. And so that more learning can reach homes, that there's no construct of safe touch and bad touch, but you have to be understanding of how perpetrators think also now. And you're giving them so much more so that they could safeguard their lives and be even more courageous for themselves. And that's how we would look at it. So I have something really beautiful for you to see. And if you couldn't pick up anything, if you could go away with the message, though you could pick a lot, and you would pick what you would based on the understanding that you have, which befits you the best. I'm going to share a video with you on which we're going to be closing. And this video is amazing. This is something really close to my heart. And I would want you to visualize how you can celebrate your scars, how you could celebrate all the pain that you've been through, and that's okay, and how much of more it's going to come. One thing that I've learned with working with Adriana is that NLP never healed anything. It just taught me how to get back up faster. Learn to get back up faster. You're going to be not, you think problems are going to reduce, they're going to increase. you know I today I have a picture of Mark in my wallet, tomorrow I'll have someone else's. There's always going to be a picture. Yet you would always want to brace yourself to waking up to the better side, where you would want to pick yourself back up stronger. Yeah. So you're getting stronger every single day. So here's a video. And if I have the sharing rights, I think I'll be able to do this. It's a beautiful video and just have a profound sense of experience for it. Then I'll close at my sharp given time. Here we go.
Dear Elliot, right now you are 2 months from being born. We just found out that you have trisomy 18, also called Edwards syndrome. Doctors tell us that you won't likely make it to birth. Your mom and I are praying against that. We're praying for healing. We are praying for nothing less than a miracle. You're our first child, and the day of your birth couldn't come sooner. Dear Elliot, you were born today weighing in at 6 pounds. You are already a miracle to us. Your mom is doing well, and it looks like we'll be hanging out here at the hospital a little longer. Dear Elliot, today you turned 11 days old. We are so proud of you. Today we celebrated your 11th birthday. In fact, we do that every day at 4:59, the time you were born. Dear Elliot, we've been home for a week now, so that's why you don't see your nurses anymore. It's great to have you home. Today I think we'll pack up everything and take our first venture out for coffee. Dear Elliot, I don't know if you've noticed, but you're connected to some tubes. The doctors say we have to keep these in so you can get oxygen to breathe. You are also fed through a feeding tube. We feed you every 3 hours and it takes an hour and a half to do it. We've loved learning how to best take care of you. We love it. Lots of people email, call, and send cards on your behalf. You're well loved. It's 11 at night right now and my feeding shift has just begun. Mom is asleep and the best part of my day has begun. My shift ends around 4:45 a.m. when your mom takes over. She cherishes her mornings with her boy. Today you turn 1 month old. I didn't know if I'd ever get to say that. To top off the day, 20 friends showed up at the door for a true surprise birthday party for you. They sang, brought balloons, and a birthday cake. It was beautiful chaos. At 2 a.m. this morning, your feeding tube came out. We had been warned this may happen eventually. We quickly realized we did not have a stethoscope, which was necessary to replace the tube. Since our neighbor was a nurse, I went ahead and knocked on their door at 2:30 a.m. They found their stethoscope and your mom went to it. After much wrestling, praying, and your tears, the tube was down, and you were able to feed. Just so you know, your mom is my hero. Dear Elliot, you now weigh 7 pounds 3 ounces. You're growing and your food has been bumped up because of your good appetite. You continue to find new ways to steal our hearts. Dear Elliot, today marks 2 months of your life. Your mom and I are so thankful we know you. We know your face, your noises. We know that bath time and massage are your favorite daily activity. You finally learned how to suck your thumb by yourself. Because of Trisomy 18, you were born with clenched fists, and being able to do this is actually quite difficult. Way to go, son. Dear Elliot, we celebrate your birthday every day with a picture. Lately, we've tried to get a bit more creative. Dear Elliot, I realize you can get frustrated with your tubes and your frequent congestion. Please know that your mom and I are doing everything we can to make you comfortable. Dear Elliot, well, you tipped the scales today at 8 pounds 14 ounces. Quite an accomplishment. You also have managed to grow a pretty decent mullet. Dear Elliot, we all got to go to a reunion at the hospital. I've never seen your mom more happy. The joy she felt getting to show off her son can't be described with words. In fact, she compared it to the way a mother would feel when her son becomes president or wins a Heisman or develops a cure for cancer. The logic of medicine says you shouldn't be alive, but you are. You are such a fighter. Dear Elliot, you have now passed the 3-month mark. You also got your first cordless pictures taken today. No feeding tube, oxygen, or stickers. This was no small accomplishment, but we got it done. Have I told you lately that we are so proud of you? Dear Elliot, today you went to be with Jesus. An underdeveloped lung, a heart with a hole in it, and DNA that placed faulty information into each and every cell of your body could not stop God from revealing himself through a child who never uttered a word. Not a pulpit, not a slick presentation, not a best-selling book, but a 6-pound boy with trisomy 18. God found great pleasure to take a lowly thing in the eyes of the world and show truth. At your funeral, we released 99 balloons, each balloon representing a day of your life. How beautiful it was to watch, how quickly they were gone. And so today, we celebrate. Elliot, you are well, and although we miss you more than we can express, we're only separated from you by our time left on earth. See you soon, son, Mom and Dad.
And with that, it's 10:30. Thank you. At my Pakistan Standard Time.
Let's hear it for Arslan. Well, fantastic and beautiful and momentous presentation, and thank you as well for accepting my level of feedback during trainers training. Look, I want to see the best in people, right? And if I've not seen the best in people, then I've got to push, because your best is much more than you think it is. So when you get to the edge of where you think it is, that's where I actually start pushing. Right. I want to see the best of you. It was beautiful. Thanks for all of that. I love that. I love the fact that you make it simple as well. There's a rumor that I might present something at some point in the next few hours, and I like to think that you should be able to explain something, if you know it, to a 6-year-old child. And they certainly don't care what selectional restrictional violation is, for example. So you should be able to explain it to a child. If you know what you know, then you can explain it, and you can say it in an hour. Otherwise, you don't know. So I wonder what I'll know. Anyway, I think it's great, and I love the fact that people always have something to look up to. And I really took that on board, and I particularly like learning to get up faster, so the loops get smaller. And I wonder what happens if all the loops disappear altogether. And if you'd be interested in knowing something like that. If you are, hang around. In the meantime, let's take a quick break. We'll